Hi, Diana Freik here. I'm the host of the Gooder podcast, where I get to talk with the powerhouse women in the food, beverage, and wellness categories about their journeys to success and their insights on the industry. This episode is brought to you by Retail Voodoo, a brand development firm providing strategic brand and design services for brands in the food, wellness, and beverage industries. Our clients include Starbucks, Kind, REI, PepsiCo, Hi-Key, and many other market leaders. So if your goal is to crush your competition by driving growth and disrupting the marketplace with new and innovative ideas, give us a call or visit our website at retail-voodoo.com. Well, super excited to introduce my guest today, Jennifer Stojkovic, food tech leader, investor, advisor, and board member of numerous startups. In addition, founder of the Vegan Women's Summit and author of The Future of Food is Female. Prior to entering the food tech industry, Jennifer built her career under prolific Silicon Valley investor Ron Conway, founder of SV Angel. Jennifer has worked closely with the world's largest tech firms, such as Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, and with CEOs of high-growth startups like WeWork, Cruise, and Postmates. And most recently, she was an advisor on Richard Branson's 2021 film, Eating Our Way to Extinction, which I hadn't heard about, and I think I'm going to have to watch this weekend. Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
Good, thanks. Great. And you're in LA today, is that right?
Yes, very, very sunny and hot. It is over 100.
No.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Seattle. We were in the 90s and over 100, and then today is like almost like fall. It's only in the low 70s today. But I will take low 70s over 100.
Yeah, this 100 is like by 10 a.m. It's 100 here. So LA is warm, and there's places that are like 110
today.
So I'm sure we can. Yeah. Well, we could talk about climate change. There's a lot to get into, but yes, California is hot.
Well, yes, there is a lot to talk about. You are one of the leaders that I'm not sure many people in CPG necessarily know about. And so super excited to bring you on board. There are so many different things we could talk about, but you started this a few years ago. What is the Vegan Women's Summit and why did you bring it to life?
So Vegan Women's Summit, VWS as we call it for short, is a global media and events platform focused on inspiring women to build a kinder, more sustainable world. So what does that mean? That means that we are bringing women into the space to either be a part of starting a company, getting a job at a company, investing in a company, becoming a professional in the plant-based or future of food space, or even just becoming an advocate for this industry. So we started about 2.5 years ago almost. We had 250 women in a room in San Francisco, and we went from 250 women to almost 50,000 women across 6 continents since then.
Wow. And what do you, my goodness. Okay, so first, let me step back. Why the Vegan Women's Summit at the time?
So it's really a convergence of both my personal and professional life. So as you mentioned, professionally speaking, I have worked in Silicon Valley for 7 years. It was doing lobbying in particular. So
I see.
Picture a very, very male-dominated industry, and then take probably the most male-dominated aspect of it, right? So bringing politics and tech together. So that is the world that I operated in, and it was a very male-driven space, and it's no secret, right? All of us know that. And so a few years ago, when I just started to see the food tech space start to gain a little bit of momentum, I thought to myself, great, this is amazing. I can finally marry my personal passion, which is I've been vegan for 8 years myself, with the work that I do. And when I first started kind of dipping my toe into programming in the industry, I was able to get a lot of amazing feedback, bring a lot of really important people together. I worked with, some of the top CEOs at all these companies in the space. But I looked around and realized that, again, it was mostly men that were around me. And it really did not look like a space for women like me, or you, or really just like anyone that was outside of that very
Yeah.
typical white male kind of like
Mhm.
almost tech bro, as we were kind of chatting earlier
Yeah.
today. That's what it looked like,
Mhm.
and that's largely because a lot of the future food companies are based in the Bay Area, and they came out of a lot of that same kind of
Yep.
tech ecosystem, right? It wasn't by intention, it
Right.
was just very much the status quo. And so I wanted to create a space for someone like me. I wanted to create a
Mhm.
space where women could come together and learn how
Mhm.
to be professionals and leaders in the space. And so that was really the impetus for building VWS. There's a
Mhm.
lot we can learn from the tech industry and do right. And there's a
Yep.
lot we can leave behind. And
Yes.
I think that is really where we shine as an organization and a platform.
Yeah. So interesting that your timing is in alignment with the My Gooder podcast platform, because I was seeing those same shifts too as we were discussing here a little while ago. And it was just kind of like, wait a minute, what's happening? Like this shouldn't be happening. And it was right at a pivotal time that a lot of other things were happening culturally within the United States. And so it's it's a wonder though that it's gain the kind of traction that you have got. What do you attribute to that few hundred to 50,000 plus people in 2 years time? What is happening in the world that is getting the attention of what you're doing here?
So the world in which we operate really is it's a lot of overlapping different spheres of influence. So first and foremost, people that are starting to pay attention to what's going on in the environment, they're
Yeah.
starting to notice what they eat and its impact, right? COVID was a great example of this. We suddenly started to see from a macro level what our food choices are doing to the planet, whether it's through
Mhm.
pandemics or whether it's through droughts
Mhm.
or wildfires, hurricanes, whatever it might be, wherever you live, pick your flavor, but you're
Mhm.
starting to see that piece. So environment and sustainability, certainly one of those big spheres. The next one being what you mentioned, I think alluding to about starting the podcast is
Mhm.
there's a massive, massive amount of people that are really quite fed up with the lack of resources and support and
Yeah.
elevation of people of color, in particular women of color. So we started from the get-go with a focus on elevating women of color in particular. To date, I think like 80% of all of our speakers, we've had hundreds that have come through have been women of color. And so
Great.
when there started to be a huge movement towards supporting Black founders, we already did so much and already had
Yeah.
so many founders that were part of VWS. We had a ton of people that said, oh, this is amazing. The vegan space is a space where Black women are really thriving. So a lot of
Yeah.
people were excited by that, a lot. And we actually, when things were happening back in 2 Junes ago with the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, we had
Mhm.
a lot of programming that we did actually as an
Mhm.
industry and a community, working with some of the most influential Black leaders in the space of what can we do as an industry to support this and move forward. So that certainly brought a
Right.
lot of attention to our work. And lastly, I think, in addition to sustainability, in addition to like DEI, there's just like an overarching interest in just women in general being
Yeah.
more empowered in the space, women in STEM, and
Mhm.
just more funding towards women. Women founders still account for
Mhm.
less than 3% of total venture capital funding. It's like
Mhm.
shockingly low. It's about 0.5% to women founders of color.
Mhm.
So when you operate with all those overlaps, very oftentimes someone is going to find like an introduction for themselves into the space. Perhaps you come for the
Mhm.
women's empowerment and learn about the sustainability.
Mhm.
Maybe you come for the sustainability and learn about DEI, right? Like that's what's so unique and powerful about the overlapping focus that we have.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about just kind of your inspiration. Like when I look through your kind of your path, your journey, you started out as being part of movements in an assistant sort of way, or like the in with the United Way. What is the influence that kind of catapulted you from being parts of movements to driving movements? I'm just super fascinated about this.
So the United Way, which was my very first, before I got into tech, that was my very first job, and I ended up actually managing millions of dollars in grant programs and did a lot in community services. A completely interesting path out of school because I studied business law and venture capital.
Mm-hmm.
So I never intended to go into public charity. And then the 3 years that I spent there, I think are some of the most formative years that I ever had in my career, because it has taught me a depth of understanding about how Americans live, how Americans eat, that I think a lot of people in this space perhaps don't understand, right? I would have single moms with 5 children with bags on their feet come in looking for, food banks and things like that. And when you have a greater understanding of like how the good swath of Americans actually think about food, it's really, how can I get food on the table? Not like, what are all the ingredients in the food?
Yes.
You start to like understand a more holistic view, like you and I are chatting about before we started the recording, of like what we actually need to do as a food industry. So that really drove my view of what we need to do from like a social aspect and the very inherent breaks in the system towards what is just terrible food options that are available to most Americans and the barriers that they face. So combining that with what I did in tech, learning about innovation, naturally creating this impactful movement to both spread innovation, but to spread it with diversity, equity, and inclusion in mind. It just made sense. Like it's literally marrying my two careers together. And so nobody was really doing it at the time. And I thought, why not me?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And there's something that you said where when you talked about the success of the program and your influence at the very beginning of your career, I think a lot of people have those moments, those opportunities early on in their career, but the fact that you listened to it and how it kind of pulled you forward, I think is really awesome, because I think a lot of times people chase the dollars, and in your at least what I think I'm hearing in your path was, yes, everybody's motivated by financial success, but you made sure that you were following kind of a path that was connecting with you as well, and not just simply means to an end. And I love that. I also am particularly for the audience that's listening, because this is something that I've been talking about over and over again. The success of the Vegan Women's Summit kind of underscores the fact that our marketing practices and our innovation practices have continued to exclude an audience that is interested in participating in this natural and better for you space and whatever level that works for them. And as adults, we don't educate ourselves. Some people go out and find education, but most of us get educated through marketing. And if you need to look for an audience that needs the most amount of education right now, there's a huge swath out there that have not been marketed to ever about better for you, or very little about better for you. And the fact that you have an audience as large as you do, I think is just kind of underscores the fact that, yes, it's out there. That's validation. And what's more, then you have this traction with your summit, and you have a book, The Future of Food is Female, which kind of takes those learnings and kind of provides it in a format that we can all have easy access to. I haven't read it yet. Apologies. I'm in school myself. I'm midway through an MBA program. So, but I believe the future of food is female too, but your direction overlaps mine, but kind of comes at it from a different angle. Was it the summit that inspired the book, or was it just this is just an additional arm of information you want to get out in the market?
So there's a lot that I could share there. I mean, first and foremost, Diana, the entire first thing that you just shared about all the consumers that are not being marketed to, I actually started a whole conversation this morning on LinkedIn about this, about Hispanic. I did, about specifically talking about Hispanic and Latino plant-based products and how there's basically no mainstream brand, despite the fact that, I mean, Los Angeles is a Hispanic majority city. The state of California was historically mostly part of Mexico. Texas is going to be about 40% Latino majority very soon. There's just so many consumer. It's $2 trillion of consumer buying power that the Hispanic community has.
Yeah.
And there's literally no mainstream plant-based brand.
Nothing.
So I could dive into that for hours. It's a huge issue, and it's across the board, right? That's just one microcosm of it. Every single community deserves culturally specific food products that are healthier and natural and plant-based and better for them. And most of them are being completely missed. So if you're an investor or a founder that's listening, please take heed. If you are one of those people that says, I can't find anything from the food I grew up that, my Nona or, Avieta used to feed me, that probably means there's an opportunity for you to start a business. It really does.
Exactly.
It's huge.
And
so
I think
that
it's very biased too, because here we are, a bunch of Caucasian Americans making food that's fat and filled with sodium and filled because we believe that that's a representation of the culture, which is absolutely false.
No.
But so not only do we not have a plant-based, but how many healthy versions of Mexican brands do we have other than fast food restaurants that are out there, which is the closest thing to kind of healthy. But I think, yes, absolutely. Huge opportunity.
Yeah. It's absolutely huge. And and we could talk even historically speaking, the vast majority of Mexican cuisine, if you go back before colonizers came over, didn't really have dairy or anything. And so it was a predominantly plant forward diet. And that is just such a massive conversation that more people have to have. And so part of the book is bringing those conversations to light. So I discovered that, putting together giant conferences and pitch competitions and job series, and we put together reports. So we put original data into the industry. We do the only women founder report in the future of food. So I talk to 150 CEOs every year and create big aggregate data on what's going on with them and the barriers that they face, including bias and discrimination, interestingly enough. All of that is amazing, and it's turning the curve. But the one thing that we were missing is media representation. We still don't have strong media representation. And so I thought, if all of these books are going to continue to focus on male leadership in the space, I'm going to just write my own. And that is what I did. It's quite simply, nobody was writing a book on it. And so I decided to write my own. I sat down with 15 different women, CEOs, venture capitalists. I got a member of the European Parliament, celebrities. Every single woman that's featured in the book is somebody that is changing the food system as we know it. And you maybe have never even heard of them, which is crazy. And I say in the very beginning of the book, you may not know who these people are today, but I promise you the book that is in your hand will become a history book because it is the first to ever be written. It will not be the last. And I promise you, these women are going to change the world. And some of them, even just to give you an example, Diana, so we have an entire section on breast milk and creating cultivated breast milk, essentially, which is a breast milk alternative that is bioidentical to human milk. So right now, so this is a very interesting one because when you talk about the healthier and better for you, it doesn't really make sense for us to create a plant-based alternative. It should really be a human milk equivalent that babies should be having.
Yeah.
Because we are mammalian, we're mammals, so we have to actually consume our own milk. So I realize that there's many people that don't have any other options. The vast majority of people are using dairy infant formulas, and that in itself is a form of systemic racism because there's so many babies that are born in this country and around the world that can't have dairy.
Right.
Upwards of 90, between 70 to 90% of Black babies that are going to be born this year can't consume dairy.
Yes.
And the vast majority of them are going to be put on it within their first month, right? So the vast majority of Black babies that are going to be born this year in America, 70, upwards of 90%, are not going to be able to consume dairy infant formula. And they will be put on dairy infant formula because most Black mothers in America have no maternity leave, right?
Right.
So these babies are put on these products that make them sick almost from their very first day on the earth. And it's very, very sad when you look at that. And so we sat down in the chapter and we talked about why we need to make a real human milk equivalent for these babies to consume. And one of the things we talked about was, an infant formula shortage. We talked about the issues and the disruptions that could happen. And lo and behold, we had an infant formula shortage a year later.
Gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I've even go further on to that because I've had a few other folks on my show that talk about food allergies and intolerances and how that is far more prevalent and dominant in within the cultures of people of color, because our diet is really kind of foundational on more European food culture. And a lot of people of color, because they are not being marketed to, will not understand kind of some more nuanced food intolerances and will give their kids products, give their family products, and end up doing things like, well, if your tummy hurts, here's some ginger ale, here's some this. And so we're kind of starting at ground zero with this lack of education. I really think it's a lack of education, and I think it's a ignorance on the part of a group of people, because it's so much easier to say, well, this is the way we've always done it. Well, you kind of have to go back to, well, why have we always done it that way, to kind of go, oh, maybe we should look at it differently,
Yeah, of course. And, it's not difficult to see, especially in certain communities. There's massive streaks of, preventable lifestyle diseases that have accompanied it as well. And so, health remains still currently, it does remain the most sought after reason as to why people move to a plant-based diet. And so, there's ways that you can better package and market your products. Like I do a lot of work with Dr. Breeze Harper. She's a good friend of mine. And she's at a Harvard PhD that specifically she's a PhD on the cultural geographies of food or something really interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I didn't even realize this existed. And when Breeze and I sit down and we talk about ways that plant-based and future food products can be better marketing to say the Black community, the API community, whatever it might be. One of the things that she taught me that I had no idea is she was saying, if you're trying to reach more Black consumers, one of the best things you can do is put dairy free on the package, because the first thing that they're often told by their doctors is that dairy is an issue in particular. And so they will go out to find dairy free or lactose free products. Yeah, just that labeling alone can help open up your product to so many people. And that's just one nuance. There's so many more that follow from that.
That's fantastic. What is the one, is there any particular one takeaway or overall takeaway that you want people to get when they read your book? What do you want people to be inspired to do or think or behave?
So the last line in my introduction, for folks that pick up the book, you'll see, I want everyone to know that they can be a part of the change, and that every single time you pick up your fork, you can be a hero and you can make the choice for the world that you want to see. It is not too big of a problem because, quite honestly, every single one of us can be a part of being on the future that we want or being a part of what we don't want to happen. And I think it's really important for folks that feel that they feel powerless, right? There are massive institutions and systems around us that seem like they're insurmountable, but they're only insurmountable until they're not. And that's just the reality of it. And there's been there have been many insurmountable systems that we have been able to take down over the years. And the food system that we have built, both in the United States and across the world, is extremely exploitive of not only the earth, but the animals that are, victims of it, the people that are victims of it as well. We don't have to continue this way. We really don't. And I think from a environmental standpoint, a lot of people are starting to realize it, because people that perhaps weren't affected by changing climate suddenly these last few years are, and they're starting to make that connection. So the book is really like a great guidebook to, here's what's going on everywhere. Here's some different technologies. Here's different policies. Here's different ways you can make a difference. Figure out your path in. Here's 15 different ways women are doing it. You can find one of these paths too.
Yes. And I love it. We have so many men that listen to this podcast, and I always love the fact that they're open to hearing from this perspective, because really what it is women, we're so communal. We share information, we share feelings, we really take all of this knowledge that's out there and kind of and pass it along to everybody. And I think, men, as you're hearing this, those of you that maybe are not quite as social as many of us women are, just, enroll women to your marketers' hands when you're thinking about those new target markets, the information that could be really valuable for them as they consider kind of some next steps and opportunities moving forward. Now, I'm curious.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm curious. Because you've made so much movement just in the last couple of years. I'm curious to you, when you look back at the work that you've been doing and food tech in this kind of vegan, vegetarian, plant-based space, what has you most excited?
That's a hard question to answer, because I am excited about a lot. I'm really excited about a lot. There is so much to be excited about. There are so many brighter things to come. I think that we are creating a lot more inclusion when it comes to the types of companies that are getting funding. That's like, there's different systemic issues that I think are being addressed, just starting to.
Okay.
So one of the things that's really important to me is a pipeline towards capital and investment. And so I do a lot of work in this, and something really big to be announced very soon in this regard. I think that we need to make sure that more people with more ideas and more products that are targeting more problems of more communities are funded. And we're starting to see that change. And I looked at people like Pinky Cole, who's a friend of mine. She started Slutty Vegan. It is like the first vegan restaurant chain that's in like the South. And she targets like food deserts, like very specifically targets places.
Love that.
She targets places that nobody wants to build a restaurant, like ones that people think are toxic because they just say like, no, it's terrible. Right. And it's like a two-pronged approach. And she wins both ways, right? Because she gets really cheap real estate. And then by putting her own Slutty Vegan there, she improves the community itself, which then raises her own real estate values. Like, it's genius, right? And she's been doing this all across the South. And she doesn't she's not in Los Angeles or Seattle or New York or SF. She's in Birmingham, Alabama,
where it needs to happen. Absolutely.
Exactly. So I look at someone like her, and she's like, 98% of my clientele are Black, 98% of my clientele aren't vegan. And I just think she found a way to serve a community that was just waiting for somebody to speak to them. Yeah. And if we could take Pinky and replicate 100 or 1,000 more, we can change the damn world.
Yeah.
It's a simple truth.
Yeah. And I mean, just listen, something called the Slutty Vegan, right? Is that what it is?
It's called Slutty Vegan.
Slutty Vegan. I think it takes the idea of veganism and it explodes the boundary, just the name. Like, this is no longer simply a political movement, because there was a time when vegan, and it wasn't, and it's just only recently that it started to change, but like veganism was like almost like a political or religious movement. And there's still elements of it. And there's still people that are really hardcore about animal rights and everything associated with that, and complete respect to that. But when it comes to the health of the planet in a more global way, that inclusivity and providing other opportunities into the club, so to speak, and making the club less small. That's my English is really good today.
Dogmatic.
Yes. Yeah. Like, fantastic. That's more of what we need is that.
Of course.
So, yes, absolutely.
That's what I believe. That's such a huge part of the mission at VWS and the book. I mean, about 40% of those who come to our conferences, we have like 1,000 people that come out. That's how many we had at our last one. It's one of the biggest future of food conferences in the world. Our next one in New York is going to have 1,500. Wow. Like, these are really big global events that we do. 40% are not vegan that attend. 20% are men, interestingly.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, shoot, we all go to conferences that are pretty male dominated. So why not?
Exactly. That's what I said. That's exactly what I said. People say, so can men come? I said, yeah, of course. They go, oh, so you have men at the Vegan Women's Summit? I said, well, my stage is for women. They go, really? And I say, yeah. And they go, so no men at all. And I said, I mean, I've been to how many conferences that are all men? I kind of like paraphrase the Ruth Bader Ginsburg of like, how many women will be enough speakers? All of them? Because there have been all men and nobody said anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So I love this expansion of veganism, a playfulness of veganism. That is really brilliant. And I love your inclusivity, like you're pulling from all different parts of business. Like this isn't just about food. This is about finance. This is about operations. This is about education, the whole bit. So that's pretty fantastic. I don't know if there's any one way that you could answer this, but is there any one thing that stands out for you in this last couple of years that happened? And it's like, I'm either the most proud of it, or it's certainly been the springboard for the explosion.
There's so many things. I will say my book, The Future Food is Female, premiered #1 in 6 categories on Amazon, which was pretty huge.
That's huge.
Including environmental science and small business, like very, very large categories. So
that's cool.
That was a pretty pinch me moment. It's my first book. So I'm already working on my second one. More to come there. But I think, just being our last Vegan Women's Summit that we did in April, just a few months ago in Los Angeles, and seeing celebrities and politicians and, just all of these people in one space that were just so energized to change things. Just, we don't care who you are, where you came from. I don't care what you eat. I don't care what you're wearing. I don't care any of it. And I'm working with a lot of executives from like Tyson and Cargill and stuff these days, like talking to, meat industry people now. I'm like, I don't care as long as you're here. As long as you are here, you are part of the community. Everybody has a place in this community because every single person can be a part of making a better choice, right? I tell people that it's not about the binary of like be vegan or not be vegan. I think we should ascend past that. It's about how can we make like vegan choices that are accessible and desirable and convenient for people. And so if we make a choice at every single step of the way where the vegan one is the superior option, it already is in some ways, but we have a long way to go. If we can make superior vegan ones every time, we can make people into basically vegan. Like we don't need to do the religious, the dogmatic aspect of it. It's about consumerism and making consumers empowered to have good options.
Yeah, I agree. This is so fun and so fascinating. We're coming up towards the end of our time, Jennifer. So I have just a few questions that I like to really kind of ask everybody. I'm curious, what are you specifically following wise? I know I use the word trend. I don't mean trends in like a trendy sort of way, but like, what are you watching? What are you hoping is going to like be the next thing? It could be in our category, or frankly, it could be in any category at all.
I'm paying attention to a lot of things. I would say that a few things that interest me right now, paying attention to the global changes to the food system with everything that's happening in Europe and how the industry is going to respond to that and adapt to that is a huge piece. Paying attention to what's going on in Africa right now. A lot of people don't realize, but within the next few decades, 50% of the continent of Africa is going to be in the middle class. It's very, very, very quickly developing into a developed part of the world. And a lot of people aren't aware of it. And that's a great place for us to be innovating. And it's a great place where we can leapfrog past some of the ails of North America, some of the fossil fuels and the way that we produce, like we can make it better for other parts of the world. So that's a really interesting area for me. I'm really excited about everything that's going on to help change like seafood as well. That's an area like nobody was really focusing on. There was very few plant-based seafood options. Now there's a lot of cultivated seafood, and I'm a diver, so I'm a rescue diver.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. So I've actually, I have a lot of experience. Like I've actually experienced dynamite fishing, which is where they drop TNT onto the reef system, and that's how about 95% of the Philippines have destroyed their reef. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that's how a lot of commercial fishing is actually done, especially in parts of like Asia and like near China and the Philippines. that's how they catch a lot of that cheap seafood,
Oh my
is they drop
gosh.
dynamite into the ocean and they blow up the
Wow.
reef, and then
Oh
the
my
dead fish float
goodness.
to the top.
Oh
So
my
I actually
goodness.
experienced a blast when I was in Malaysia 4 years ago. There was a blast nearby that went through all of our chests while we were under. So the quest for stopping the way that we fish is very, very near and dear to my heart. And I am like all in on every single technology that I can find to help that.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that's huge. Okay.
Yeah, it'll change the way you eat when you see and experience something like that. You're like, what? You know, we were already vegan, but we had other divers that were like, oh my gosh, are you telling me that I might have bought those products? And they're like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You just have no idea.
Oh my goodness. Okay. That I'm going to have to, I'm like having a moment. Okay. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. Are there any women leaders out there or rising stars that you would like to elevate? I mean, you already did earlier today, but is there anybody in particular that you'd like to elevate for the work that they're doing?
So obviously everyone loves Miyoko. Miyoko Shinner's done
Yes.
an amazing job in the plant-based space. I think there's a lot of other really incredible women. Denise Woodard, Partake.
Yes.
She'd be great for the podcast if you haven't actually had her
I've
on.
had her and Miyoko on already. Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
Denise is. I've loved watching her rise and some of the work that
Yes.
she's done, partnering with HBCUs and things like that, and
Mm-hmm.
creating like a pipeline into CPG
Yes.
for these students that historically like probably wouldn't have that is huge. So I
Right.
love what she's doing. I'm very excited by, there's a lot of really badass women scientists in Asia, especially in Singapore and Hong Kong, that are
Really?
creating like, so a lot of the innovation that's happening in the cultivated meat space that you hear about is in North America, right? But
Right.
there's like an entire massive ecosystem happening in Singapore. And
Really?
almost all of, and you can actually read about Dr. Sandhya Sriam. She's in my book as well.
Okay.
She has the biggest cultivated protein company in Singapore, and it's I think the biggest one in all of Asia. Like their technology and how fast they're evolving, I think there's a good chance. Like I honestly believe this. I think there's a good chance that some of these companies are going to surpass our American extremely well-funded companies with
Wow.
what they're able to accomplish down there. Yeah,
That's
it's
great.
wild.
I'll be looking forward to that. Oh my goodness. What's next for you? What should we be keeping our eyeballs on?
Well, we just announced the Vegan Women's Summit. Our big global event is coming back to New York.
Excellent.
So we're going to New York City for the first time. It'll be May 18th to 20th. So
Okay.
you can go to vws2023.com. We want to have tickets out for a few months, but you can get on the wait list for pre-sale. We're going to sell
Okay.
out. We always do sell out. We're bringing like 50 plus brands, folks like
My goodness.
Impossible Foods, like Miyoko's, like all the top plant-based brands, all kinds of
Excellent.
sustainable fashion. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then I have a big announcement coming up soon of another thing that I'm working on that will be announced by Q4. I can't quite say what it is yet, but it will be it will change the game for underrepresented founders.
Ooh, I love that. Okay. I have a couple of resources to send you in that regard as well for maybe working together or networking, but our time is running out. Listen, we've been talking with Jennifer Stojkovic, author, founder, advisor, free spirit, women on a mission. Jennifer, where can people learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
So we are literally everywhere. So if you go veganwomensummit.com/newsletter, you can get on our weekly newsletter. We do
Great.
Women Founder Wednesday. Women Founder Wednesday is the only newsletter that does the future of food, fashion, beauty, and biotechnology, only focused on women leaders. So it's really cool. We cover about 16 news stories every week. So every Wednesday in your inbox. We also are on every platform, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. You can find us at Vegan Women's Summit, or Twitter is at Veg Women's Summit. And then me, I am pretty big on LinkedIn. I've got a pretty large platform on there, so you can find me under my name. I'm also jenniferstojkovic.com if you want to learn more about some of my work. And then I'm on TikTok and Instagram at Jenny Stojkovic. Do a lot of videos, viral videos talking about these concepts.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Jennifer. I'm so happy to have met you. I feel like I have an email with a bunch of connections I need to make for you that you may already have them, but just in case. And really excited for what you're doing. And I want to thank all of the listeners who have been listening today. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time on the Gooder Podcast.
Produced by Heartcast Media.